The day the Leviathan emerged into the Orvani expanse, the stars themselves seemed to dim in its presence. No fleet had ever moved with such precision. No warship had ever carried the weight of unspoken terror like this one. Humanity had been dismissed for centuries. Minor traders, scavengers of ancient technology, barely worthy of recognition in the grand politics of the galaxy. But the Dominion of Varkari, the insectoid empire that had ruled half the known systems, had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that the humans would react as all the others had, with pleas, with negotiations, with submission. Instead, they brought forth the Leviathan, a vessel so advanced, so terrifying in its silent dominance, that it shattered the illusion of the Dominion's supremacy in a single, devastating moment. The Battle of Kaelor Prime had been swift, brutal, and absolute. The Varkari had struck first, their swarm fleets descending upon the human colony with ruthless efficiency. They had expected Earth's forces to scramble, to send a few outdated warships in a desperate attempt to defend their people. What they did not expect was for the Leviathan to arrive unannounced, flanked by the Wraith and the Ironclad, each more menacing than the last. The Dominion's fleet, once thought invincible, had been reduced to burning wreckage in less than an hour. Their shields, designed to withstand centuries of warfare, had crumbled under the sheer force of human weaponry. Their command structures had collapsed before they could even issue a retreat. The Leviathan had not come to negotiate. It had come to erase. Across the galaxy, the Unified Systems Alliance, a coalition of the most powerful empires, watched in horror. Their diplomats had long dismissed Earth as a minor species, a race of scavengers barely capable of interstellar travel. But now, as they pored over the footage of the Leviathan's assault, they saw something they had never encountered before: true technological supremacy. The humans had not merely matched the galaxy's greatest powers, they had surpassed them. Their weapons were not the elegant energy-based systems of the Thelari Enclave, nor the organic bioweaponry of the Xorath Pact. They had perfected something far deadlier, a fusion of kinetic devastation and quantum warfare, an arsenal that rendered all known defenses obsolete. The Varkari Dominion had been annihilated, not just their fleets, but their very will to fight. Their homeworld, Varkari Prime, remained untouched, yet the silence from their leadership spoke volumes. They had not sent reinforcements. They had not issued threats. They had simply vanished, their ruling council scattering into the void, their remaining warships fleeing rather than face the wrath of Earth's forces. The message had been clear. Humanity did not seek war, but when provoked, they would end it with a finality that no species had ever faced. But the destruction of the Varkari was only the beginning. The Unified Systems Alliance knew that if humanity had done this to one of the galaxy's most powerful empires, what else were they hiding? And more importantly, what would they do next? Within the Celestial Spire, the Unified Systems Alliance convened an emergency session. The chamber, a vast construct of obsidian and plasma, pulsed with the dim glow of the gathered empire's holographic projections. At the heart of the room, suspended in a gravity field, a recording of the Leviathan's assault played in slow, agonizing loops. The footage revealed the terrifying efficiency of human weaponry. Quantum lances slicing through the Varkari's swarm carriers with surgical precision, gravity well generators pulling entire squadrons into crushing singularities, and nanite swarms consuming enemy hulls like living fire. The Varkari had been obliterated, not through brute force alone, but through a mastery of warfare that defied known physics. The Xorath Pact delegate, High Warlord Threxos, his massive armored form crackling with residual energy from his recent battle on the Corvani frontier, slammed his clawed fist onto the table. "This is an abomination," he growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "We have fought countless wars, and yet this is not war. This is extermination." His mandibles twitched, his species tell for agitation. "We must act before they strike again." Across the chamber, the Thelari Enclave's ambassador Rayola floated in her anti-gravity pod, her translucent form flickering with uncertainty. "But we do not even know where they are," she murmured, her voice like a whisper in the void. "They have no known bases, no visible fleet movements. They strike, and then they vanish. How do we fight an enemy that exists in the shadows?" The Yelvian Concord, a species of crystalline beings whose rigid geometric forms pulsed with internal light, remained silent, their collective minds calculating probabilities, weighing responses. Finally, their prime speaker, Velos, broke the silence. "We have underestimated them," he stated, his voice resonating with an eerie harmony. "We believed their technology primitive, their military negligible. But this was not improvisation. This was planning." His crystalline form shifted, refracting the dim light around him. "They have been preparing for centuries." A hush fell over the chamber. The truth was undeniable. The Unified Systems Alliance had dismissed Earth as a minor species, a race of scavengers who had stumbled into the stars. But now, the Varkari Dominion, one of the most feared powers in the known galaxy, was gone. Not weakened, not pushed into retreat, simply erased. And the humans had done it with only 3 ships. The Prime Speaker turned his gaze toward the others. "We must determine the extent of their forces. If this was but a fraction of their strength, then we are already at their mercy." A flicker of panic crossed the Xorath warlord's face. "Then we strike first," he declared. "We gather our fleets. We launch a preemptive assault before they can consolidate their power." But Ambassador Rayola shook her head. "And where would we strike? We do not know their homeworld. We do not know their command centers. They have left no trace." The Yelvian Concord's prime speaker exhaled softly, the sound of shifting crystal. "No trace," he mused, "but they are not gone. They are watching." The room tensed. The humans had not sought conquest, but their message was clear. They had the power to end any empire that threatened them. And now, the Unified Systems Alliance had to decide, would they attempt to challenge this new force, or would they submit to the reality that they had already lost? The Unified Systems Alliance scrambled to assess the full scope of Earth's power. Intelligence agencies across the coalition worked tirelessly, decrypting intercepted transmissions, analyzing wreckage from the Varkari fleet, and attempting to reverse-engineer the weapons that had annihilated an empire in a single engagement. Yet, for all their efforts, the truth remained elusive. Human technology defied known classifications. Their fleet movements were undetectable, and their command structure was an enigma. On the Xorath Pact's war station Corvani Prime, High Warlord Threxos convened his war council. The room, a cavernous expanse of jagged obsidian and crackling energy, was filled with the hiss of plasma vents and the low hum of tactical displays. His commanders, clad in armor that pulsed with bioluminescent markings, stood in rigid formation as he paced before them. "We cannot afford to wait," he growled, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of conquest. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities beyond anything we have ever encountered. If we hesitate, they will strike again." A Xorath Admiral, Vikaros, stepped forward. "We have begun reinforcing our outer colonies. Our fleets are on high alert, and our orbital defenses have been upgraded. But we lack intelligence on their true numbers. We do not know where their command centers are, nor the full extent of their arsenal." Threxos clenched his mandibles. "Then we find them." Across the galaxy, the Thelari Enclave faced a different dilemma. In their ethereal citadel, a floating structure woven from strands of pure energy, Ambassador Rayola stood before her species' High Synod, a council of luminous beings whose forms shimmered like liquid starlight. They did not speak in words, but in pulses of radiant thought, their collective consciousness resonating through the chamber. "The humans have no presence," one of the Synod members projected, its glow flickering with uncertainty. "No transmissions, no fleet movements, no diplomatic overtures. They are ghosts in the void." Rayola's form pulsed in response. And yet, they are everywhere. They have infiltrated our networks, our defenses, our very perception of reality. If we cannot see them, how do we fight them? A new thought rippled through the Synod. We must not fight them. We must understand them. But understanding was proving impossible. The Yelvian Concord, known for their mathematical precision and strategic foresight, had run countless simulations against human fleet compositions. Each time, the results were the same: catastrophic defeat. Their AI constructs, designed to predict outcomes with near-perfect accuracy, could not find a viable path to victory. On the Concord's homeworld, Velos Prime, the Prime Speaker stood before a council of crystalline figures. Their tactics are unlike any we have studied, he projected, his thoughts rippling through the chamber like a wave of light. They do not engage in prolonged warfare. They do not seek to weaken their enemies through attrition. They strike with overwhelming force and leave nothing behind. One of the council members pulsed with concern. Then what do we do? If we cannot match them in battle, if we cannot anticipate their movements, if we cannot even detect them, how do we survive? Velos exhaled, the sound like a slow grinding of stone. We must determine if they are our enemy or our liberator. The debate raged across the galaxy. The Unified Systems Alliance had always ruled through strength, through the certainty that no force could challenge them. But now, that certainty was shattered. The humans had not come for conquest, nor had they made demands. They had simply demonstrated their power and vanished. And that was what terrified them the most. Deep within the Sol Defense Nexus, hidden beneath the icy crust of Jovian Station Theta, Earth's true command gathered. Unlike the chaotic deliberations of the Unified Systems Alliance, this was a place of cold, calculated precision. The chamber, a vast circular hall lined with obsidian walls and pulsing with the glow of embedded data conduits, housed the Strategic Operations Directorate, the unseen architects of humanity's rise. At the center of the room, Commander Polly Ross, the mastermind of Earth's modern war doctrine, stood before a holographic projection of the galaxy. His presence was unassuming, his uniform devoid of insignia, but his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "The Varkari were the first," he said, his tone devoid of triumph. "They underestimated us, and they were removed. But this was never about them." Around him, the gathered minds of Earth's military-industrial complex remained silent. Dr. Nova Rin, chief strategist of the Quantum Warfare Division, adjusted the display, highlighting the movements of the Unified Systems Alliance. "They are reacting as expected," she noted. "The Xorath Pact is mobilizing its war fleets. The Thelari Enclave is tightening its borders, and the Yelvian Concord is running simulations." She glanced at Ross. "They will find no answer." A lieutenant commander, Jackson Reel, exhaled sharply. "They're already trying to counter us. We intercepted a Xorath transmission from Corvani Prime. They're discussing preemptive strikes, but they don't know where to aim." He tapped a control panel, and a new data stream appeared. "The Thelari are attempting to trace the Leviathan's origin, but their scans only register void." Ross allowed himself a faint smirk. "Good." The Leviathan had not been Earth's only vessel deployed. The Wraith and the Ironclad were only the first wave. Humanity had been preparing for centuries, watching the galaxy from the shadows, learning its weaknesses, its arrogance, its complacency. Now, the moment of reckoning had arrived. "We do not seek war," Ross continued. "But we will not tolerate interference. The galaxy has spent too long treating us as an afterthought. That ends now." The room remained silent, not out of hesitation, but out of understanding. Earth's war was not fought with fleets alone. It was fought with fear, with uncertainty, with the knowledge that no species could ever truly know where humanity stood. And soon, the Unified Systems Alliance would learn the cost of their ignorance. The Unified Systems Alliance was not blind to the threat, but their attempts to counter it were futile. Across the galaxy, fleets were mobilized, defensive lines reinforced, and intelligence agencies pushed to their limits. Yet, despite their efforts, humanity remained an enigma, silent, unseen, omnipresent. On Xorath Prime, High Warlord Threxos stood before his warlords, their forms wreathed in bioluminescent fury. "We must act," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We cannot allow this shadow to dictate our fate." A Xorath general, Kaelthar, stepped forward. "We have deployed our Scyther drones along the Corvani corridor. They are undetectable, capable of tracking enemy ships through residual energy signatures." He hesitated. "But they have found nothing. No human vessels, no movement. Only silence." Threxos growled, his mandibles twitching. "They are hiding." "Yes," Kaelthar admitted. "But not just from us. The Thelari Enclave has confirmed that their ethereal scanners cannot detect human fleet activity either. Even the Yelvian Concord, whose cognitive arrays can predict fleet movements with near-perfect accuracy, have found no trace of Earth's forces." The room tensed. The Unified Systems Alliance had built its power on certainty, on the knowledge that no enemy could move unseen. But humanity had shattered that certainty. "The humans are not hiding," Prime Speaker Velos projected from a distant transmission relay. "They are everywhere." The words sent a ripple through the room. If the humans had infiltrated the galaxy to such a degree that their presence was undetectable, then the Alliance's entire military doctrine was obsolete. "We must strike first," Threxos roared, "before they decide to act again." But Ambassador Rayola of the Thelari Enclave responded with a pulse of light. "And where do we strike? We do not know their homeworld. We do not know their command centers. We do not know if they are watching us even now." Silence settled over the chamber like a shroud. The humans had not only demonstrated their power, they had made the Unified Systems Alliance question their very existence in the galaxy. Commander Polly Ross stood before the command console of the Sol Defense Nexus, his gaze fixed on the shifting holographic map of the galaxy. The Unified Systems Alliance was reacting exactly as expected, scrambling, reinforcing, searching for an enemy they could not see. Their fleets were gathering, their intelligence networks were straining, and their leaders were whispering of preemptive strikes. But they did not understand the truth. Humanity had already won. The war had already begun. And the Unified Systems Alliance had no idea that they were already fighting a battle they could not win. "Deploy Phantom Protocol," Ross ordered, his voice calm, measured. Lieutenant Commander Jackson Riel hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Initiating silent incursions now." Across the galaxy, in the void where no light reached, Earth's hidden fleet moved. These were not the Leviathan, nor the Wraith or Ironclad. Those were only the first wave. These were the true instruments of human dominance: quantum stealth carriers, nanite infiltration vessels, and AI-controlled warships that required no crew, no communication, no oversight. They did not fire weapons. They did not make threats. They simply existed, drifting through the darkness, unseen by any known sensor technology. In the Thelari Enclave, a scryer station orbiting the ethereal rift suddenly went dark. Its operators vanished without a trace, their consciousnesses severed from the Enclave's vast neural network. No alarms were triggered. No fleets were dispatched. The station's last transmission was a single corrupted message: "We are already here." On Xorath Prime, a war command terminal flickered. For a fraction of a second, the High Warlord's security protocols were overridden, replaced by a single line of text: "Your defenses are a joke." The breach was undetectable, leaving no trace, no evidence. The Xorath had always prided themselves on their impenetrable war networks. Now they were no longer sure of anything. And in the Yelvian Concord, where logic and strategy dictated every military decision, a cognitive array, the most advanced predictive AI in the galaxy, began to malfunction. It no longer ran simulations, no longer calculated probabilities. Instead, it simply displayed a repeating phrase: "You are already defeated." The Unified Systems Alliance was unraveling. Not from direct attacks, not from fleet engagements, but from the knowledge that humanity was everywhere and nowhere. That they had already infiltrated. That they had already won. And the worst part? The humans had not even begun to fight. The Unified Systems Alliance was unraveling. What had once been a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful empires was now a tangled web of paranoia, fractured alliances, and desperate maneuvering. Across the Corvani corridor, the Xorath Pact deployed Scyther drones in greater numbers, their organic sensors scanning every cubic meter of space for any trace of human presence. Yet, the void remained empty. No fleet signatures. No energy emissions. No movement. On Xorath Prime, High Warlord Threxos stood before his war council, his massive form radiating frustration. "They are ghosts," he growled. "We cannot fight an enemy we cannot see." A Xorath general, Kaelthar, shifted uneasily. "We have begun rerouting our supply lines, deploying decoy fleets to draw them out. If they are watching, they will see our strength and understand that we are not afraid." Threxos let out a low, guttural hiss. "They do not need to see us. They already know." His words sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. The Xorath had built their empire on dominance, on the certainty that their war fleets would crush any opposition. But now, that certainty was gone. In the ethereal citadel of the Thelari Enclave, Ambassador Rayola floated in her anti-gravity pod, her form flickering with uncertainty. The High Synod, a collective of luminous beings, pulsed with concern. "The humans have no presence," one of the Synod members projected. "And yet, we feel their weight pressing upon us." Rayola exhaled softly. "They are not merely watching, they are testing." The Synod's glow dimmed. Testing for what? For weakness. The Yelvian Concord, ever the calculators of probability, had ceased all military simulations against Earth. Their cognitive arrays no longer provided viable strategies, no longer suggested a path to victory. Instead, they displayed a single, unchanging message: no outcome exists where you win. On Velos Prime, Prime Speaker Velos addressed his crystalline council. "We must determine our next move," he projected. "The Unified Systems Alliance is already breaking. The Xorath prepare for war. The Thelari retreat into uncertainty, and the Varkari, what remains of them, have scattered like dust in the void." A council member pulsed with a question. "Then what do we do?" Velos did not hesitate. "We do not fight. We survive." The Unified Systems Alliance had existed for 1,000 years, but now it was crumbling. Fear had replaced unity. Distrust had replaced trust. And humanity, unseen and unchallenged, had already won. The Unified Systems Alliance was a relic of a bygone era, a coalition built on the assumption that no species could rival its strength. But humanity had shattered that illusion. Their technology, their tactics, their very presence had rendered the Alliance's centuries of dominance meaningless. And now, as the last of the great empires scrambled to hold their crumbling order together, Earth's final message was delivered, not through warships or weapons, but through silence. Across every system, every world, every military command center, the message appeared. Not broadcast through official channels, not transmitted via diplomatic relays, but embedded directly into the very core of the Alliance's networks. It was not a warning, not a threat. It was a statement of fact. The war is already over. You simply have not realized it yet. The words struck like a final death blow. The Xorath Pact, once a force of unrelenting aggression, withdrew its war fleets from contested borders. The Thelari Enclave, masters of energy and perception, severed all military coordination with the Alliance. And the Yelvian Concord, whose calculations had always dictated the course of galactic warfare, issued a single directive. "We do not fight the inevitable. The Unified Systems Alliance had no formal surrender. No treaties were signed. No fleets were handed over. But its power had evaporated. The great empires that had once dictated the fate of the galaxy now ruled from fear, their leaders whispering of human infiltration, of unseen fleets, of weapons beyond comprehension. And in the darkness beyond their borders, humanity remained. Watching, waiting. Commander Polly Ross stood before the sole defense nexus, his expression unreadable as he observed the final collapse of the Alliance's military command. "They understand now," he murmured. "They know that resistance is futile." Lieutenant Commander Jackson Riel, standing at his side, exhaled. "But they'll remember. They'll try again." Ross allowed himself a rare smile. "Let them. The stars belong to humanity now, not through conquest, not through diplomacy, but through sheer, undeniable dominance." And as the galaxy's once mighty powers bowed to the reality of their inferiority, Earth's silent war had already been won. Across the galaxy, the Unified Systems Alliance fractured under the weight of its own terror. The Xorath Pact, once a force of relentless expansion, now hoarded its fleets in orbit around its core worlds, unwilling to risk them against an enemy that had made its presence known only through absence. The Thelari Enclave, masters of energy manipulation and perception, withdrew from interstellar politics entirely, sealing their borders and retreating into isolation. Even the Yelvian Concord, whose crystalline minds had always calculated strategy with unerring precision, could no longer determine a path to victory, only an inevitable end. On Xorath Prime, High Warlord Threxos stood alone in the war chamber, his bioluminescent armor dimmed in frustration. His warlords had argued for a preemptive strike, but to what end? They had no target, no enemy fleet to engage, no command structure to dismantle. Humanity was not a force to be fought. It was a presence that loomed over them all, unseen yet omnipresent. "Their silence is their weapon," Threxos muttered, his mandibles twitching in agitation. "They have made us doubt our own reality." A Xorath general, Kaelor, approached cautiously. "We have begun deploying our Scyther drones beyond our borders. If they are watching us, we will find them." Threxos exhaled sharply. "And if we do?" Kaelor hesitated. "We do not know. Their fleet is undetectable. Their weapons are beyond our understanding, and their message—" He trailed off, his voice faltering. The message had spread through every secure network, every military terminal, every diplomatic channel. It had not been sent. It had simply been there, as if it had always existed, as if humanity had embedded itself into the very fabric of the galaxy's communication systems. "The war is already over. You simply have not realized it yet." Threxos clenched his claws. They had ruled through war for millennia. And now, in a single moment, they had been rendered powerless. The humans had not needed to conquer. They had only needed to remind the galaxy who truly held power. And that reminder would never be forgotten. Humanity's dominance was no longer a question of military might alone. It was a reality woven into the very fabric of the galaxy. The Unified Systems Alliance had spent centuries dictating the course of interstellar politics, shaping the fate of countless species through treaties, wars, and economic leverage. But now, in the wake of the Varkari's destruction and the silent incursions of the Phantom Armada, that rule was over. The galaxy no longer moved by the will of the great empires. It moved by the certainty of humanity's presence. On Jovian Station Theta, within the Sol Defense Nexus, Commander Polly Ross studied the latest reports. The Xorath Pact had ceased all expansionist campaigns. The Thelari Enclave had severed its diplomatic ties with the Alliance. The Yelvian Concord had issued a formal withdrawal from all military coordination, effectively dissolving the last remnants of unified resistance. The great powers of the galaxy had not been defeated in battle. They had been undone by fear, by the knowledge that humanity's war was not fought with fleets, but with inevitability. Across the stars, the remnants of the Unified Systems Alliance scrambled to adapt. Some factions sought to ally with Earth, offering trade agreements, technology exchanges, even military cooperation. But humanity did not need allies. They did not seek to rule through diplomacy or economic dominance. Their message was clear: they would not expand. They would not interfere. They would not make demands. But if any species dared to challenge them again, the war would not be fought, it would be executed. And so, the galaxy entered a new era. Not one of conquest, but of silent rule. Not one of open warfare, but of unchallenged supremacy. Humanity had not needed to take control. They had only needed to remind the galaxy that no force, no empire, no alliance could stand against them. And now, the stars belonged to them. In the vast emptiness beyond the known systems, where the galaxy's light barely reached, Earth's Phantom Armada drifted in absolute silence. These were not the Leviathan or the Ironclad, nor the Wraith, which had already demonstrated the terrifying reach of human warfare. No, these were the true instruments of dominance, ships built not for battle, but for surveillance, for control, for the quiet dismantling of any power that dared to challenge them. Each vessel in the Phantom Armada was a marvel of human ingenuity. Their hulls absorbed all known forms of sensor detection, rendering them invisible to the most advanced scanning arrays. Their propulsion systems left no residual energy signatures, no trace of movement. They did not communicate through conventional means, nor did they require command relays or human oversight. They were autonomous, guided by the most advanced AI constructs ever developed, machines that did not hesitate, did not question, did not fear. They existed to watch, to calculate, and to act when necessary. Deep within the Soul Defense Nexus, Commander Polly Ross stood before a vast command console, his gaze fixed on the real-time data streams flowing from the Armada's silent incursions. Every movement of the Unified Systems Alliance was mapped, every fleet maneuver recorded, every whispered conspiracy intercepted before it could take shape. Earth's war was not fought in open space. It was waged in the unseen, in the knowledge that no empire, no species, no fleet could move without humanity knowing. A soft chime signaled the arrival of Lieutenant Commander Jackson Riel, who stepped forward, his expression grim. "The Xorath Pact is attempting to develop countermeasures," he reported. "They're running simulations, testing new scanning algorithms. But they're chasing ghosts." Ross did not respond immediately. He simply tapped a control panel, and a holographic projection filled the room. Dozens of Xorath warships, their movements tracked with perfect clarity. The Thelari Enclave was no better. Their ethereal scryers, designed to detect the faintest energy fluctuations, had found nothing but void. Even the Yelvian Concord, with its vast cognitive arrays, could not predict humanity's next move, because there was no move to predict. The humans were not waiting for a battle. They were ensuring that no battle would ever be fought. Riel hesitated before speaking again. "They're starting to panic." Ross exhaled slowly. "Good. Let them, because the true war had already been won. Not with weapons, not with fleets, but with the knowledge that humanity was always watching." The message arrived not through diplomatic channels, not through military broadcasts, but embedded directly into the Unified Systems Alliance's command networks. It was not a demand, not a threat, not a declaration of intent. It was a statement of fact, a final, undeniable truth that shattered the last remnants of the Alliance's confidence. You are already defeated. You simply do not know it yet. Across the galaxy, the message spread like a virus. It appeared on encrypted military terminals, within the sacred halls of the Thelari Enclave's ethereal citadel, even in the Yelvian Concord's cognitive arrays, machines that had never failed to predict the future, yet now displayed a single, unchanging result. Human victory is absolute. On Xorath Prime, High Warlord Threxos stared at the message as it pulsed across his War Council's tactical display. His claws tightened around the command table, his bioluminescent markings dimming in frustration. "They are inside our systems," he hissed. inside our minds. A Xorath general, Kaelor, stepped forward. Our best cryptographers have found no trace of the transmission. No origin, no breach. It simply appeared. He hesitated. As if it had always been there. Threxos exhaled sharply. Then they are not just watching us. They are rewriting us. The Thelari Enclave had already begun its retreat. Their High Synod had issued a final decree. We do not engage an enemy that cannot be seen. Their once dominant presence in interstellar politics faded into obscurity, their leaders withdrawing from all major councils, their fleets no longer patrolling the trade routes. They had not been attacked, not been threatened. They had simply been shown the truth. And the Yelvian Concord, whose prime speaker Velos had once prided himself on the logic of his people, now stood before his crystalline council, his form flickering with uncertainty. We have run every simulation, he projected. We have tested every possible engagement. There is no outcome where we win. A council member pulsed with a question. Then, what do we do? Velos did not answer immediately. His people did not surrender. They did not yield. But now, for the first time in their history, they faced a reality that no strategy, no alliance, no weapon could overcome. We do nothing, he finally projected, because the humans have already decided our fate. And with that, the Unified Systems Alliance, once the galaxy's most powerful coalition, fractured beyond repair. The war had never been fought. It had already been won. And humanity had done it without firing a single shot. Commander Polly Ross stood before the command console of the Soul Defense Nexus, his expression unreadable as he absorbed the final reports from across the galaxy. The Unified Systems Alliance had not officially dissolved, but its power was gone. The Xorath Pact had ceased all expansionist campaigns, their once ruthless warlords now debating survival rather than conquest. The Thelari Enclave had withdrawn from all major diplomatic engagements, retreating into isolation. The Yelvian Concord had abandoned all military simulations, their cognitive arrays displaying only one unchanging truth. Human victory is inevitable. The galaxy no longer dared to test them. Ross turned to Lieutenant Commander Jackson Reel, who had just entered the chamber. "Status update," he ordered. Reel stepped forward, his expression grim. "The Xorath are running new countermeasures. They're attempting to develop a new scanning protocol, one that bypasses conventional detection methods and focuses on anomalies in the fabric of space itself. They suspect that our vessels manipulate reality to remain hidden." Ross exhaled slowly. "And the Thelari?" "They've begun dismantling their ethereal scryers, claiming they can no longer trust their own perception of reality. The Yelvian Council is in disarray. They have no strategy, no countermeasure, no plan." Reel hesitated. "They're afraid." Ross allowed himself a small smirk. "Good. Because that was the final truth. The Unified Systems Alliance had not been defeated in battle. It had been undone by the knowledge that humanity was everywhere and nowhere. That resistance was not only futile, but impossible. Their fear had become their own undoing, their paranoia, their greatest weakness. And now, the galaxy belonged to Earth. Not through conquest, not through occupation, but through the sheer unshakable certainty that no power could stand against them. The war had never been fought. It had already been won, and humanity would never let the galaxy forget it.